Herzliya-Conference 2012. Herzliya-Conference 2012. Special interviews, highlights, and live broadcasts on IDC-Radio.
Hello and welcome to the IDC and to the Herzliya-Conference 2012. We have with us here Mr. Nick-Butler. He is an energy policy advisor and a public policy professor at King's College. Welcome.
Thank you.
You participated in this morning's panel here at the Herzliya-Conference. You spoke about Israel's natural gas. I'd like to ask you, what should Israel be doing with its natural gas? Should we be exporting or should we be exploiting it within?
Right. I think the first thing is to keep exploring and to find out exactly how much gas there is. We're still at quite an early stage in the process. There are 3 or 4 finds, but there are another dozen licenses still to be drilled. And I think it's a bit early to take full long-term decisions on what should be done. So the first step is to keep looking and to find out how much Israel actually has. The second thing is to think about what the best way of getting the greatest value for the country is from the resources that have been found. And my view is that it's going to be quite expensive for Israel to export to the world's main growth market, which is Asia. The distance is quite substantial, and I think there are a number of other countries, the Gulf states, Indonesia, Australia, and others, all trying to sell into the Chinese market, and they're closer. So Israel's going to start with something of a competitive disadvantage in that market. Therefore, I think that before people think about exports, they should think about all the potential there is for using gas in Israel. And that starts with producing electricity. So I think that at the moment a lot of coal goes into producing electricity in Israel. I think that could be backed out and substituted by Israel's own gas. That's environmentally beneficial. Secondly, I think you could start to see the natural gas offshore being converted onshore into methanol. That can be used in buses and cars, and that allows you to substitute out some of the imported oil that Israel uses. Mm-hmm. The next thing, I mean, this is a developed economy. It's not a banana republic that has to export its resources as most OPEC countries are. I think it should think about what other OECD countries have done when they've found gas. And that includes building a grid in all the main cities here so that gas can be supplied to every business and every home. Now, I would see that as bringing great value to the country. It can start now, it can be developed over time, and it can create quite a lot of jobs in Israel, and I think that's needed. Israel's a relatively rich country, but there are still people who are relatively poor and in need of jobs. And I think it would be very beneficial to use the gift of God with the gas resources that have been found to develop the economy here. And then if more is found, which is quite possible, then you can think about exports. But I'd start in the country because I think that's where the greatest economic value lies.
Now, what were the other opinions around the table?
Well, there were several people who actually agreed with me, which was very nice. The minister, Mr. Landau, was there. He was being very careful because there's a committee investigating this on behalf of the government, reporting to him and to the Prime Minister here. And so he didn't come down with a definitive judgment. There were some people, including the electricity company, the chairman of the company was on the panel. He was very good. He said how much more could be used in electricity in Israel. And there were several people on I think the majority of the panel would agree that you start by using the gas here. But there were the commercial people there, the representative of one of the offshore companies, seemed a little nervous about the scale of the market in Israel and was wanting to be given permission to export because they think they can find an export market. I wish them luck.
Mm-hmm. Now, how important do you think it is for Israel to have its own energy independence?
I think it's what's happened over the last year in Egypt and the way in which the gas supply there has been cut 6 times now by explosions in the pipeline through the Sinai has reminded people here that Israel relies on imported energy. Now, the way that's been dealt with is to substitute back, to use more coal, to use more fuel oil. That's not good for the environment, and it's been very expensive. Particularly for energy consumers, it's been expensive. So I think that it is good. It's part of national security to have energy security. And I think that now, with the gas, you have a potential to be more secure in energy than you've been in the past.
Mm-hmm. Will energy independence provide Israel with financial security, military security, or social security?
Not in itself. What it does is reduce the extent to which Israel is dependent on countries like Egypt, which are perhaps not totally reliable suppliers at the moment, and dependent on imported oil, where you can't control what the world price is. Mm-hmm. So it gives you a degree of distance from those pressures, from those things that are outside the control of anybody in this country. That's the gain. It doesn't in itself solve every problem, but I think it is a positive step. And I also think that if you use the gas in this country, you can create jobs here. And I would see that as quite an important thing to do at the moment.
Have you heard of the tent revolution that took place this summer?
Yes,
in Israel,
I saw
the
it.
big social protests.
I saw it in the Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. And I think that that is an indication that a lot of people are finding the cost of living here quite high, and that there is now a division between those who are really well off and those who are not. Mm-hmm. And I would hope that the gas, by creating jobs and new opportunities, can close some of that gap. It can't close it all. Let's be clear. It's not a magic solution, but I think it can help.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about Iran. The economic sanctions on Iran, will they lead to a shortage in oil or to an increase in oil prices?
It depends what Iran does. I don't think Iran has the incentive to stop producing. And I think it does have now, because of the sanctions that are building up on it, the incentive to think again about its nuclear program. And one hopes that it does. I think that if there is a conflict, clearly all sorts of things could happen, and you could see a spike in the oil price, which would be damaging. But I hope we're not at that stage yet. I hope that the pressures that are being put on Iran will encourage them to think again.
Now, how do you think that would impact the Western world, and specifically Israel?
How do I think that sanctions will impact?
No, sorry. How do you think that an increase in oil prices would impact the Western world or Israel specifically?
Well, Israel imports oil. It would have to pay for the oil that it was buying, and therefore it's a cost, and it would be passed on to consumers. That's, I think, Israel is a rich economy. It can manage that. The question is how long the price increase would go on for, and how high the price would go. And clearly, if there was a serious war in the Middle East and oil supplies were cut off, if the Straits of Hormuz were closed, you would see prices going up very sharply, at least for a time, and that would damage the fragile Western economies, particularly in Europe, which is a major trading partner of Israel, and in the United States. So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Let's hope so. Now, what do you think of Israel's development of solar energy? Have you heard of what we're developing here in the country, renewable energy?
Yes, I think it's far too small, far too little. The chairman of the electricity panel this morning said that renewable energies in total were supplying only about 1% of electricity in Israel. That is below the figure in the UK, and the UK has far less sunshine than you do normally. So I think what I was suggesting on the panel was that part of the proceeds from developing the gas over the next few years should be devoted to developing the renewable energy business, encouraging investment and giving it a growing share in electricity supply. And I think that there's potential for three forms of renewable energy in Israel: wind, particularly in the north; solar power, particularly in the south and the Negev; and thirdly, the conversion of waste in the cities. Waste is just put into landfills, which are not a great thing. And I think that there are technologies now which could convert that into power. And I would think it was rational for Israel to develop all three of those and to use just a bit of the proceeds from the gas, the economic benefit, to think about the long term and to develop those energy supplies for when the gas runs out, because it won't last forever.
Especially in an innovative and technology-oriented country such as Israel.
Yes, I think it's surprising how little has been done on renewable energy here. And I still think that around the world, over time, people are going to move away from hydrocarbons. Not immediately, but I think in 2 or 3 decades' time. And if Israel developed, as it developed some of the high-tech businesses, if it could develop businesses with great technology on renewable energy, they could be world leaders.
Well, Professor Nick-Butler, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you coming in to speak to us.
A pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed the end of the conference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.